We looked before at organizing juggling according to a pattern of numbers that wasn't side swaps. We had this idea of a pyramid of numbers, counting one up to 6 and back down again, in a different sort of form or shape, and organizing technique according to that pattern, however we wanted to. And of course, at any step of the way, we could have changed what we were choosing to do, what was normal, what was different. And in this way, right now, we're going to have another little warm-up exercise where we look at another way to organize juggling through a system that's not what we traditionally use. So we're not going to use a pattern of numbers so much as we're going to organize the space around us. And what we're going to do is a little bit of an extension on some ideas from Jérôme Thomas, who has a system of juggling called cubic. And as well, there's been extensions on Denis Palmier's zone system, where people have divided the body into different sorts of grids and numbers of squares in the air. For now, we're just going to use that as a starting point, as kind of a metaphor to start with how we can organize juggling in different ways. And we're going to imagine that in front of us, there's a grid of 9 squares. So we have 2 lines coming down here and 2 lines going across. So in front of our body, we're going to have this, we have this area, and we're going to divide it into 9 squares. And so for now, we can say that maybe it's something around here, like this size. Basically, the area of the whole big square, all 9 squares, equal our kinesphere. And the kinesphere is how far you can kind of reach in every direction with your limbs, with your arms and legs. So I imagine that there's 2 lines going vertically and 2 lines going horizontally, which means I have these 9 squares in front of me. And for now, we can just say, we can imagine that the center square is kind of right around here. Just by coincidence, it's as wide as my shoulders. Just to make it convenient, why not? And in that way, we're going to take 3 balls and start to organize the juggling according to these squares in front of me. And just to point out one more time, these squares in front of me are imaginary. Of course, they don't exist, but they could have been divided into many more pieces or different shapes, triangles or circles, or I could have just chosen one square over here and a triangle down there, or whatever we want to use. But for now, we're going to start simple and just say we have this grid, and how can we start to use a grid to organize our juggling technique, instead of talking about patterns like Mills mess or shower or side swaps. And the first thing we'll do, since we divided up the space, is let's just try to juggle in each of the squares and see what that means to our body physically, and then start to expand from there. So the first thing we can do is juggle in the square in the middle, just a cascade. And for now we can say, you can go ahead and juggle with me. It's just the normal cascade, and it's going to fit really nicely in that middle square. So the next thing we can do are the squares that are on the same level, which means there's one to my right, which means for now I'm going to say that my right arm will be as straight as possible. And I can try to juggle the cascade there. So you can go ahead and try that. And we have both hands over in the same square. So for example, I'm juggling over here now. I put both hands in that square and I try to do the cascade. And as well, I can stop, come back to the normal, and then try the square on the other side, on the same level, which is the middle level, of course. And again, now my left arm is straight, and I try to juggle 3-ball cascade. And there's a couple of things we can notice straight away. The first one is that when I move my arms to either side, in the middle, to either the squares on the side, it's very easy for me to turn my whole shoulders, and my hips, and my whole body. So it's something we can be aware of and say, well, do we want to juggle like this and say that the square to the side of me, do I turn and face it in such a way that these squares are curving in a circle? Or do we say, perhaps what I prefer to do for now is that the squares are flat, and it is exactly as I've drawn them here. It means that when I move my hands over to the side square, I should try to keep my shoulders as flat and straight as possible, and so are my hips. And that way I'm only going to move the arms and the balls over to the side, and try to juggle a cascade there, as much as I can keep this shoulder back when I'm going over on this side, and same thing here. As much as I can keep this shoulder flat and straight, and then I have my cascade over here. So try that one more time and just notice how much you're turning your body, in what position, and where is that square actually that you're trying to juggle inside. Again, these choices are our own. We can change them at any point we want to. But for now, let's say we want to juggle flat, like we're drawing on the wall, and so we want to try not to turn our body as much as we can. and notice what's happening with the hips and the shoulders. And the second thing to notice, one final time before we move on, is that when we're juggling in these squares, I already know you can juggle a 3-ball cascade. Same for myself. I can juggle 3 balls. It's fine. I don't need to worry about that. So when I juggle to the side, what I really want to try to do is juggle as best as I can. Because I already know if I turn a little bit and make a few little small adjustments, it's super easy. I can juggle over here. I can juggle over here. Like, it's no problem. But what I want to try to do is organize the juggling in a new way. And that way, I prefer to take the position, and even if it's hard, and I'm not very good at it, I still want to try to juggle as best as I can, but not change the position. So even if it's just a few throws and it's really awkward, it's okay. I'm going to get better at it if I practice it and if it's something I want to practice. But from the beginning, if you get to a position and you say, okay, this is my position, I'm going to try to juggle 3 balls here, and then you start to turn because it's easy and you can keep going, it doesn't really serve any purpose. We already know that you can juggle 3 balls fine. The point is that we're going to try to organize the juggling in a new way. So take the position, even if it's just 1 or 2 throws at the beginning for a cascade, that's okay. It's better to do 1 or 2 throws in the perfect position than to do a bunch of throws and break your form. So try one more time. We try it to each side and just really think about, you're going to do really good throws and try to do really good throws on the other side as well. And the whole time, you're just going to think about, where is my position? Where do I want to be? And we can define these squares in any way we want to. For now, I'm just defining it and saying that the edge of my square to my left is that my left arm is straight. And that the edge of my square on the right is that my right arm is straight. We're taking some sort of interpretation of this grid. Okay, that looks good. So now, let's try the next squares. We should just try to juggle each square and see what it does to our body. So we can take the next one, let's go down, and say that we'll try the square that's in the bottom and the middle. So we're going to work with this square here, right around the legs. And again, just drop down so the balls are in that plane, and try to do the cascade there. And how low you go, it's up to you. But again, we could start to think and say that, well, actually, when we drop the cascade from the middle down to the square at the bottom in the middle, that maybe the arms go straight. That could be a good physical definition, instead of just saying as a metaphor of, well, I juggle the 3 balls here in the middle square, and now I'm going to juggle them here lower. Sure, maybe we can start to experiment with other parts of the body and balance and posture. But for now, it seems that, so far, we've started to define things by the straightness of the arm on either side. So why not keep doing that to be consistent in this world that we're exploring? So when we juggle down here, maybe we have straight arms. So try again and just notice, what is your physical definition of what we're trying to do? It's also good to notice that when you're going to have straight arms, it's important that really your arm is literally straight. And that's really stupid to point out, but it's so easy to be unconscious about these things and have your arms bent really ever so slightly. Like if I put my arm to the side, and I say, okay, now my left arm straight, we're really concentrated here, our focus is here on the juggling. But actually the arm is not straight. Now the arm is straight. So we can also take a visual check of our bodies, as well as how we feel. Because sometimes how we feel, we don't notice what we're actually doing. We're concentrated somewhere else. It's the same thing now when we're juggling down here. If you want to have straight arms, please make both of your arms straight and don't just think about it and say, yeah, I want to have straight arms there, and then just juggle like normal. You have to visually check and physically check and make sure your arm is actually straight. So try one more time. Have straight arms at the bottom, the square in the middle. And now, we're going to try to juggle in the square to the right of your body on the bottom. So again, we can go here and then move over and be aware of the shoulder, your hips. Are you turning? How much do you want to turn? Do you not want to turn? Do you want to be square and straight? Over here, stretch this arm across as much as you can while keeping the shoulder back. And we try a cascade there. And these, of course, get increasingly difficult. But it's just to experience them and see how they feel on your body and see what it means physically. Remember, it's better to do 1 or 2 perfect throws than just to juggle the 3-ball cascade for a long time. Because we know you can juggle 3-ball cascade, no problem. Then once you tried a few throws there, let's try on the other side, just to see if it goes any better for any reason. So I'm going to try the lower square to my left. Good. And again, what we're really looking at is a system of how to organize our objects in space. So we have an advanced technique now that we're probably not used to. We probably don't spend our time practicing 3-ball cascades like that. But you could if you want to. The only thing we can do now is we can see how it feels, we can start to experience it and understand the mechanics of what's happening. Later on you can learn the technique. Technique just takes time to learn. So for now it's just to experience these positions. We tried the 3 on the bottom, we tried the 3 in the middle, so let's try the 3 on the top. And we have, first of all, the hands in the middle position and the square on the top. This one up here, right around the head. It means that for now, as well, we have a little technical issue. Because most people, when they try to do the square on the top, they go like this. And they turn the hands over, right? And they do the cascade here. Because that's what they're used to when they juggle higher than this middle square, this middle plane that we're used to juggling in. But it means that if I move my hands to the top and I turn them over there, why am I not turning them over here? And more importantly, why am I not turning them over here or here? Which you can see makes it a lot harder. So the justification of saying, well, when I move my hands up and I turn them over, it makes it easier, that doesn't really work because, well, it doesn't make it easier here, but if you can do it in one place, shouldn't you do it every place? We're trying to define this world that we're living in. So if it's okay to turn my hands over in one place, then why is it not okay everywhere else? And then we should really look at that, even if it's much harder. So for now, we try not to turn the hands over, because we didn't turn the hands over anywhere else. So when we bring the balls up, yeah, we try to have some straight arms again, as a definition of where is up. And we're looking at our kinesphere, which means how far we can reach. But we don't turn the hands over. We keep the palms facing the ceiling as much as we can, and we try to do the cascade there. Again, 1 or 2 throws, the best you can. You can also start to notice when you bring your hands up somewhere, do your shoulders follow? So are you bringing your hands from here up to here with the shoulders up? Or do you want to keep your shoulders down? And when you bring your hands up, the shoulders stay down but the hands go up. So it doesn't go here, rather it goes here. If you want to, but we can think about that too. It's a choice we could make, but then we have to think about what does that mean when we do the other positions about the shoulders. Should they be really up here and kind of up here and then down when you're down? I don't know. But we can start to think about these things and make our own rules. For now, I'm going to say, just to keep it simple, let's keep the shoulders down when the arms go up. So try one more time. Shoulders down and the arms up. We try 3-ball cascade with the arms straight. And remember, if you want your arms straight, then make them straight. Good. And now we're going to try the last 2. So we're going to go up and then to the right, for example. And again, the squaring of the shoulders and the hips. We'll try a 3-ball cascade up there. Really hard, for me at least. It's not something I practice. And after trying a few throws there, then let's try to go, instead of to the right, we're going to go to your left. Or the square on the other side on the top. And again, better to do 1 or 2 throws and stop than to try to just keep running it, but in a bad position. Because we already know that you can juggle 3 balls. Okay, now that we tried the physical position of each of these squares, we can start to organize the juggling in different ways. The first thing we'll just take is very simple. You can follow along with me. We'll just start juggling in the middle square, and we're only going to work with the 3 squares that are in the middle level. these three across the front here, across the chest. For the moment we stay there, and it means that as we're juggling, go ahead and juggle, and it means that I can move the cascade over to the square to the right, and again, trying not to turn my body, and back to the middle, and you can move it over to the left, to your left, and back to the middle, and then as you want, you can just move the cascade back and forth side to side. Again, be aware that you're not really turning your body so much. I mean, this would be a different sort of work than we're doing today. For now, we want to say that the body stays nice and straight. I'm just going to move over to the side, so straight arm, back to the home position, normal position, to the other side with the straight arm. And let's try that down, and then after that we try that up, really briefly. So we're going to start down, juggle in the middle. I try to juggle to the side. This is pretty difficult for me. Juggle to the other side, back to the middle. We just take some side-to-side movement of the cascade. And once we try that a few times, we can do the up. We're going to start juggling up and try to go to the side. And try to go back and forth, if at all possible. These things are difficult just because we don't practice them. If we would practice this kind of work every single day, of course, it would be easier to do. You can learn to juggle 5-ball back crosses, you can learn to juggle 3-ball cascade, going from the upper square on one side to the upper square on the other side. It's just what you want to practice. But for now, it's enough to kind of understand what we're doing and how we're going to start to organize this even more in different ways, in different patterns. And now that we've tried to move side to side on each level, let's try to change levels. So let's take a S shape or a snake, and in this way, we can go through all the squares at once without stopping. And if we start in one of the upper corners, we can go down all the way to the other side, and then from here, we can let's just try to go straight back up. Or if you want, of course, once you come down, you can go back through the middle again, and we have this figure 8. Either way, it doesn't matter. For now, what I want to try to do is, we've moved side to side on each level. Now let's move side to side and change levels, and try to hit all the squares at once. And you can loop it however you want. We're not so specific yet. We will be later on, but for now, we're just trying to experience what it means to move the cascade through space and hit all the squares in some way. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to start up and to my left. I'm going to juggle across, down to the middle, down here to the right, and then I'm going to try to stay on this side so that I go the other way, and I juggle up the other side, just for fun. So let's try to do that. Here we go. Upper left corner, and these are going to be the hard ones, so we try to move fast. We juggle across on the top, and then it gets a little bit easier, because you're in the middle. It gets super easy. We drop it down, go down through the lower ones, and then up on the side. It becomes super hard again. I'm having terrible technique and form of keeping my shoulders straight. But it's kind of fun to try to move the cascade through space. Again, this comes back to being difficult because most of the time when we juggle, we're very practical. We say, okay, our technique is going to be that I stand straight, I keep my center over my feet, I have a good balance, and I juggle here straight, and I don't move this over here. When we do juggle, technically, well, even as we stand technically as human beings, if I move somewhere to the side, there has to be some sort of small counterbalance to make me not fall over. If I don't counterbalance that, of course I fall that way. And in this way, it means that with juggling normally, we think that for good technique, we want to juggle very balanced so that our arms, the muscles in the arms, are only used for throwing, and they're not used for balancing. Because the thing is, if I should stand on one foot and juggle on the side, at some point, my arm muscles are working to balance me instead of just to juggle. And that way we normally talk about having good balance, but the arms are used for only juggling and they're not distracted by something else. At least it's the more efficient way to juggle. So normally we don't move these juggling patterns around our body in this way because we want to have good balance. But for now, we did experience all 9 squares at one time, and we had this up motion here on the sides. So let's look at that for a second. Let's look at this changing levels, because when we try to do all 9 squares together, we do have this level change at some point. Even if it's just jumping from one level to the other, if you keep doing the figure 8. It's going from the middle to the up, or the middle to the down and back. Let's just try the 3 squares here in the middle, and just look at how it goes to go up and down. Let's start, you can start in the middle, and then juggle up, and then juggle down, and then juggle up, and down. You can go straight arms on the up, bent arm like normal in the middle, and straight arms down. And these level changes are a little bit different than going side to side, because side to side we have the same technique. In the same way that we have the same timing and rhythm, side to side all the throws are a little bit equal. But now you might start to notice, for example, when you go from the upper square to the middle square, you have these throws that drop down. We have gravity, of course. It's the same thing when you're going back up. You have to fight against this. The rhythm is a little bit different. So when I come down in one way, if I want to do it in one throw, I can just drop down, and I can just drop down. But when I come back up, I have to be faster. I have to eat that extra time to go up because we have the gravity pushing down. So we have these level changes. But so far what we've been doing is that each of the hands have been in the same square. So when we juggled in the middle, both of my hands were in the same square. When I juggled to the side, I moved both of my hands over to the side square. But of course now we can start to juggle with the hands in different squares. And for now, let's organize that we only do squares that are adjoining each other, or that they have a shared common wall. It means that for now, the starting point can be, we juggle with one hand in the middle and one hand over to the side square. Let's see what that looks like physically. So, I'm going to use the square to my right. It means that my left hand will stay in the middle for now, and my right hand is going to go over to the side. So now we have one hand that is, we can say normal, and the other hand is straight. And we try to do a cascade there. Again, keeping the good body position of the shoulders and of the hips. And we can try the same on the other side. And now you can almost pick any 2 squares you like that share a common wall. So for now, we're not doing squares that are more than one space removed, right? So for now, you can do squares that share a common wall, like these 2, obviously these 2, any sort of combination that have a common wall. Especially the up and down ones are quite funny, because we do have this whole gravity thing going that's a little bit strange for this cascade on different levels. For now, let's try to just do squares that are on the same levels to see how that goes. So we can try the same thing we just did, down or up, as you want. Try those out really, really fast, just see what they feel like. Obviously these combinations get harder as we go, but some of them might be kind of funny. And in fact, some of them are kind of also quite classic. They're not some sort of new idea. Let's take now that we can put the hands in any square that we want. It means we can put them in squares that are diagonal to each other, or we can also skip squares. So I can have one square on the side and the other on the other side. Let's start in the middle, and after that we're going to look at a really classic trick that sort of organizes against this system. But the first one, let's just try, I have both hands in the middle, put one arm to the left, one arm to the right, and I try to cascade there. And again, remember, this is easier, of course, to keep my shoulders and my hips square and straight. But before we had defined and said that the arm, when it goes to the side, is straight, and the other arm on the other side is also straight. So when you do the cascade, now really try to keep those arms straight. And don't move the elbows. It's so easy to have a little bit of movement on the elbows because the technique is hard. But try to keep the arms straight. We try to follow the definition that we established from the beginning. But now let's look at the classic trick. We'll take the exact same position, but up one level. And it's the Chris Primo, right? It's the Chris Primo cascade from his famous act. So we have one arm up to the right, one arm up to the left, and we have a 3-ball cascade there, right? This is the old Chris Primo trick. And again, don't bend your elbows unless you want to make that a rule. And let's try the same thing on the lower level now since we're there on this idea of one arm on each side. Remember just to try to do a few throws in each position. It's better to do a few perfect throws than a bunch of bad throws. So at this point, what we can do with our system, just to see what it looks like, is now you can pick whichever 2 squares you want. Put an arm in one square and put an arm in another square and try to do a cascade. You can choose any sort of level to mix. Diagonal is fine. Of course, the hardest ones would be an upper side one and a lower on the other side one to try a cascade there. There's also weird cascades where you start to have these different levels with one hand up and one hand down on the same side, for example. Those are obviously the hardest ones. But just pick 2 squares and then try to do a cascade. Already you can see technically this is a really hard challenge. And you can also imagine that if you were able to juggle a 3-ball cascade in any of the combinations of any of the squares, you'd be quite a good juggler. So in that way we have a 3-ball cascade that's super difficult to do. And for me that's a really important point. Because I start to think about my own juggling when I started out and I say, okay, well I have 3 balls, it's really easy. Yeah, well I'm physically making it easy. I'm physically standing straight, I have my arms in a comfortable position. But of the material I already have in my life, because I can already do 3 balls, look at all the combinations we could learn if we chose to practice them, right? If I could do all the combinations of all the arms and all the squares, it would be amazing, I think. Or at least I would be really interested to do that. And I'm pretty sure if we're talking about the juggling community, if people saw you juggling in that way, they would also have some sort of strong reaction. Not only is it different, but there is a recognizable skill there. And in that way, what I mean is, a lot of the tricks we already have in our possession, inside of our body, with our own technique, we have so many more ways we can expand those tricks. Lots of times we talk about learning new tricks in such a way that, okay, I have this trick down, so now I'm going to learn a new trick, which means a new pattern. But you don't have to change the pattern to have a new trick. Going back to this idea, again, about having objects, body, and rhythm. If we change the body, we also have, in one way, a new pattern, a new trick. We talked a little bit before, perhaps, about Jerome Thomas when he would say, okay, I'm doing a trick, and now I'm doing a new trick, or now I'm doing a new trick, or now I'm doing a new trick. And those ideas aren't so easy to agree with, perhaps, traditionally, from our instinct. But now, when we have this system of organizing juggling in space like this, it becomes very technically apparent that what we're doing does take some sort of skill, and therefore it is some sort of new trick. Let's not worry about that anymore, but let's take a few final steps with this grid, because this can go on forever, how we can expand what we're doing. Working with an abstract concept on top of juggling that's not talking about the pattern, and it's not talking about the psych swap. It's only talking about how we're organizing, how we're using the technique. It means let's go back to moving the cascade between the squares, but let's start to count our throws. And so for now, let's say, we're going to juggle, say, 4 throws in the middle, 4 throws to the side, 4 throws in the middle, 4 throws to the side. And let's start to see what that means when we start to count the throws in each of the squares. We can just try that out as you want on your own. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, good. So pretty much straight away, we can start to understand that on the 4th throw of each square, we want to move. It means the 4th ball in each cascade in each square is going to be the transition throw in that way. So we get a lot of combinations of these throws from each hand in each direction when we're doing these counts side to side like this. So sometimes it's my left hand that's going to throw to my right, the transition throw. It means that left hand cascade throw, which normally would be in the middle square, has to be much longer to the side, and the rest have to be contained. And then sometimes that left hand is going to throw straight up and down almost, instead of throwing across, because I need to go, there's the transition throw. So we have these transition throws that go straight up and down, so that the arms cross, or we have these transition throws where the ball crosses much farther, so that the arm can go out to the side. So try one more time, and we think that when we count to 4, every 4th throw is a transition throw, and those transition throws can be either extra long crossing, or then straight up and down with no crossing at all, and the arms do the crossing for it. Try one more time, and notice that where those throws are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. Good. Yeah, great. So now let's take the same idea and just cut it down to 3 counts. So instead of 4 counts in each square, we're just going to do 3 counts. Try that again. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3. And now, of course, on the 3 counts, you'll notice it's the same ball that always does the transition throw, right? So I go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it's the same ball. Now the ball goes straight up and down, it goes to the side really far, back really far. So we have 2 far throws of the transition ball, and then 2 throws where it's almost straight up and down. Try one more time and notice that when we're counting to 3, it's the same transition ball each time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And now, let's try to do 2 throws in each square, and try to work that out and see what happens with the transition ball then. So in this way, again, this is really easy to have terrible form, and it's easy to turn a little bit. It's okay. For now, we're really worried about these transition throws and the counts, so we can be a little bit forgiving inside of the technique. And now when we have the 2 throws, it means the same hand is always transitioning. So it's not the same ball anymore, like the 3 counts, but in 2 counts, it's always the same hand. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It's always my right hand that's throwing these weird throws to get me to each square. So try one more time. In that way, I start with my left hand, so that's going to be 1, and the 2 has to be the transition throw. It means it's my right hand. Of course, if you start the other way, it's going to be your left hand. That's always doing the transition throw. So try one more time, and notice on the 2 count that one hand will always be doing these transition throws. And you're going to start to make these really weird throws. Good. And the last thing we can try before moving on is, what if we did 1 throw in each square? What does that mean? So we're going to try to go middle, side, middle, side, middle, side. So we always come back to the middle, but we're only going to try to do one throw in each square. Try to work that out on your own. I'm going to try to work that out as well. It means every throw is going to be a transition throw. One, 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 middle, side, middle, side, middle, side, middle, side, middle, side, middle, side. It's quite funny. But again, this is a pretty big challenge, at least it is for me, mentally and physically. We're only working with a 3-ball cascade. You know, so when you think about it in that way, this simple trick that we had moments ago, where we said, oh yeah, 3-ball cascade, that's nothing, it's a joke, it's the thing I started with. Suddenly, we start to organize it with a very, very simple system. We're only working with these 3 squares in the middle now, and we're only working with counting up to 3 or 4, and now we're just only counting to 1. And already the way we organize our hands according to this pattern makes it almost impossible to do. Again, only because it's not something that we normally practice. But still, as a juggler, it's a good exercise, I think, to do this kind of technique, as well as mental preparation for what you want to do next, what you actually want to do. So now let's try to go that we're going to skip the middle box when we go one way. So we're going to go, let's go side, middle, side, back to the beginning. So we're going to go side, middle, side, back to the first side. Let's see that transition throw, because now the transition throws have only been going from squares that have a shared wall, right? Squares that are adjacent, we have these transition throws. Let's see what it means to have a transition throw from one square to another square, and they're not connected by a square in the middle, right? So we're going to skip over a square on this bigger transition throw. I'm going to start on the side, and let's just try to juggle how many counts you want. This can be a bit organic, because we're only concerned about this transition throw for now. We don't have to count, okay? Just start on the side as best as you can, move to the middle, go to the side, and then have one throw that takes you over. And of course, try the other way if you want. Good. Let's take this idea, where we have this idea, and normally sometimes in juggling this is called the typewriter pattern, right? Because it comes back to the beginning, this typewriter idea, which nobody knows what that means anymore with our phones and computers, but it means you go to one side through all the possibilities and you come back to the beginning, skipping over the middle part. So we don't repeat the middle part, but only going one direction. And now we have this transition throw that goes from one side all the way to the other. But let's try that. It's much more funny, I think, to do with the 3 squares that are vertical. Because again, this vertical transition between levels of different heights, we have this thing about the gravity where the ball can drop all the way down, or we have to go all the way back up. So let's try the easy one first. And the easy one, we're going to juggle from the lower middle square to the middle square to the upper middle square, and then in one throw, all the way back down to the lower one. And you can just do one throw and let the ball fall all the way down. For now, we're not going to count. It's going to be organic as you want. We're just going to explore this transition throw from the top middle square to the bottom middle square. So again, start in the bottom, and then juggle up to the top, and then in one throw, come back down to the bottom. Cool, but let's do the opposite one, and it's the much harder one, of course. So while I think this one is really fun and nice when I drop all the way from the top down to the bottom, Now we have to go opposite. We're going to start up, juggle down through the middle, juggle in the middle, juggle here at the bottom, and then do in one throw all the way back to the top. And don't hit your face. Then move your face out of the way. So, top, middle, bottom, and then, if you can get it back up to the top again. And now that we've tried that in one throw to go all the way up, let's try it in 2 throws. Let's just try to go from the top, middle, and bottom, back to the middle, back to the top. So you have one little throw there and one little throw there. Then we have, again, these transition throws coming down. It's very easy. They're almost natural, and you don't notice they're transition throws. When you change levels going up, you have to make a really big effort to change the level. So now instead of taking one all the way up, let's just take 2 little throws up and see how that feels. Cool, and now that we practiced that, let's put our counts on top of it one more time. So let's do 3 throws, 3 throws, 3 throws, 3 throws, 3 throws. So 3 in every square, and we're going to hit the middle square every time. So we're not doing this typewriter idea. We're going to go top, middle, bottom, middle, top, middle, bottom, middle, top. 3 throws in each square, and this way we can start to see these transition throws very clearly. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, yeah, you guys are doing that good. Let's do it on 2 counts then. Let's try it on 2 counts. See how that feels. So every other ball is a transition throw. It's going to be the same hand throwing the transition throw all the time. All right, on 2 counts. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And why not? I mean, you're only alive once, so we're going to do one. Let's do one throw in each square. One throw in each square. Top, middle, bottom, middle, top. See if that's even possible. One. Ah. Right. And again, later on, as we get better at the technique, we can start to argue about what it means to have accuracy in this goal about counting in each square. We can start to argue where exactly is the hand, what is the physical position, what does it mean, what does a cascade mean, and how do these transitions go from up to down. The last thing we can do for now is, so far we've been doing the same number of counts in each square. Whether it's been 1 count, or 2 counts, or 3 counts, it's okay. But now let's try to do different numbers of counts in each square. Because of course, this is a very simple way, another really simple step to make this much more complex. So let's try to do 3 throws here on the side, 2 throws in the middle, and then 1 throw on this side. And for now, let's say that it goes back to the 3 throws. So let's try to have this 1 throw is going to be a transition throw back to the beginning. So we have 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Now, see how that goes. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. So this one really depends on which hand you start with. So it depends on where you start counting. If your transition throw is going to be an easier one with this arm straight that comes across, or it's going to be a really, really weird one from the other side. So try to start on either hand. Stay on the same side, but start either hand. You're going to get a different pattern. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. Yeah, how's it going? Let's try. Last thing we'll do, because again, I think you can understand that this work can just keep expanding forever. So far, we're taking very simple examples of each concept. But you have all these ideas of squares that are adjacent, that share a common wall. You have diagonal squares. You have the possibility to have squares in between squares in terms of organizing. Well, now I'm only going to use squares that don't touch each other, for example. I'm only going to use squares that have another square in between them. We can start to organize both hands are in the same square, or both hands go to different squares. And as well as the numbers. And the numbers can be the same in every square, or the numbers can change for each square, whatever kind of pattern you want to do. In this way, you can see that the technique we have is expanding exponentially. We're still only using 3-ball cascade. So what if you applied this same work to something that wasn't the cascade? What if it's a pattern that you actually use in your life, that you say, well, this is a relevant pattern to my juggling now? All of a sudden, you can see technically it's becoming really difficult. But maybe there's something worthwhile in that. And we start to understand that our technique, we're limiting it very much through our own traditions and our own beliefs. Of course we are. But at the same time, we're not really aware of it. We think, okay, 3-ball cascade, well, that's all you can do. Well, I did it now. But obviously not. I mean, look at all the ways you can do a 3-ball cascade. And there are still some people who are talking about this World Juggling Federation, this WJF, with sports juggling. And they want to have a respect for the technique and the skill inside of juggling. I mean, I would like to see an event then at WJF of this, where you have to do 1 throw in each square. Would that not be quite impressive? Maybe with 4 balls or 5 balls even, of course, or clubs or rings, or diablos or whatever. If we start to talk about technique and difficulty and skill, what I want to try to convince you of is the only thing that's holding us back is our own mind, our own limitation that we impose upon the work. This work of a cascade with the 9 squares is only hard because we don't practice it. So for example, in the WJF, when they do tricks like 5-club single spins, that's only respected by us because we normally didn't learn it with single spins. We learned it with double spins. But if the whole world would have learned to juggle 5 clubs with only a single spin, it would be the natural thing to do. It wouldn't be respected as a higher technique. It's the same thing here. When we're taught to juggle 3 balls, everybody teaches you and say, no, stand straight, no, put your arms there in a nice position, no, don't lean over, stand up really tall, and now keep the balls right there in front of you, don't move them. Right? That's what everybody tells us to do. But what if the first day you learn to juggle, you say, oh, what's juggling, what's this? And you meet someone and they say, yeah, cool, there's these 9 squares, and then you should put your arm here and here, and you start practicing that from day 1. It's not going to be so hard as it was for us today, who've never tried it before, but also in our minds we're going to say, oh yeah, but that's a thing you can do. It is something that is possible. So in terms of this idea of our relationship to technique, and what we think is hard and what we think is possible, it's only what we've been taught before, what we think is normal and what we think is usual. Because now we've just been doing 3-ball cascade, and it's almost impossible, at least it is for me. I mean, it's not something that I do naturally or it comes easily, but I do find some sort of value in it. And I would love to be able to do all these patterns with 3 balls. So let's take the last thing today with this sort of system, and let's just do 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the 1 goes back to the 9. Just for fun, just to try it once. And we say 9 throws here, 8 throws here, 7 throws, 6 throws, 5 throws, 4 throws, 3 throws, 2 throws, and this 1 throw is the transition throw all the way back to the beginning. And of course, the top of each of those numbers, like we were doing before with the pyramid, it's going to be the change. It's the transition throw. So throw number 9 from here is going to move me to the middle, and throw number 8 from the middle is going to move me to the side, etc. And then we do have a couple of these little throws up here on the side, and this really big one diagonally down, which should be kind of fun to try. Let's just give it a try. All the way down through the 9 squares with all the throws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's good. It's good fun. At least to try once. Four, five, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3. Quite impossible without practicing the technique, but still already from this system I think we can start to understand different types of throws that we do like. And so maybe when you're working on this kind of system, you don't have to do every single throw possible, but you do have to kind of experience them and explore them and start to notice and say, hey, actually, that throw from up here down there is pretty cool. Maybe I should work on that. Maybe I should invest the time to learn that technique. So we can have a system and explore it. We don't have to learn it fully, but there is some sort of physical knowledge that comes from trying each thing out at least once. And then we can start to edit the ideas and collect them and then practice them later on.